And we will call the meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting of Ottawa County CMH. And we will open today with invocation. I sent an email out to the members of the board earlier this week that I ran across an article that I thought was impactful, discussing the importance of hope. And one of the quotes is, "Hope is a powerful emotional force that may even be more essential to our well-being than happiness or gratitude." And it struck me as being particularly appropriate for the work that we do here on this board. Our goal, as stated in our mission statement and vision statement, which is listed in the agenda, is to improve the lives of those who we serve. And hope is an important element of that, maybe one of the most important dynamics that we can impart to our consumers. And with that in mind, let's open with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for an opportunity once again to meet and perform the work that we're called to do. Give us your blessing, give us wisdom, give us patience, and most of all, help us to be grateful for the fact that we can offer hope to the people here in Ottawa County who call upon us for services. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
Let's stand, if you're able, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a time of public comment at the beginning here. If you'd like to speak, please try to limit your comments to 3 minutes and announce your name and where you live before you speak. Thank you. Would anyone like to use the public comments?
Barbara Lee Van Horsen, City of Grand Haven, and the Momentum Center. First, I wanted to share with you that I returned yesterday from Washington, D.C. I was invited there to be part of a coalition with Special Olympics to talk about how to make our community health and needs assessment more accessible to people with IDD. It was a gathering. They pulled together people who were mostly public health. There were only 2 of us from nonprofit, me and somebody from the ARC in Detroit, Lauren. And then representatives from public health from a number of counties in Michigan and Ohio. So I just found it very encouraging that there's a real desire to emphasize how do we get that information and collect it from some of our most vulnerable. And so please know that that work is going on and that our county is part of those conversations. The other thing is, as you know, we've been looking for quite some time to find somebody to license our kitchen, the VU Cafe. We still are looking for somebody to take up that business opportunity, but it's a difficult environment for restaurants to start. And so our members have rallied us. They are volunteering to run the cafe. Our cafe is now member run from 9 to noon, Tuesday to Friday. It's cash only, and everything is, there's some suggestions, but it's donation based. So I invite you to come. On Mondays, we continue to have the cooking and baking classes, and so they're baking things and selling those as well. They're very excited about having an opportunity to, as they feel, really pay back and be invested in the long-term financial good of the organization. It's just a win-win. So they're excited. Please stop in between 9 and noon, Tuesday and Friday, have some delicious baked goods and beverages, and spend time visiting with the people that you serve. Thank you.
Good morning, board members. I'm Becky Patrick from Allendale Township. I'm here to speak this morning on the contract amendments you're considering for a couple of your residential programs, specifically MOCA Corporation and Harbor House Ministries. I'm asking you to pause these increases or to consider significantly reducing them because they're very large and because I think you need more information. And because, as you well know, you're running a serious budget deficit. I've been present at Board of Commissioners meetings several times when Dr. Bashirs has rightly informed the board of the significant deficit situation at CMH. I don't have the up-to-date shortfall numbers in front of me, but if my memory serves, it's in the millions of dollars. The increases you are being asked to approve this morning are not only very large in the middle of a contract year, but the per-day bed rates no longer seem to be set in a tiered manner based on the severity of the client's needs. Instead, they appear to have been set at one standard rate for all clients, no matter the severity of their need. And this rate, to be applied to all beds, it appears, exceeds the previous rate for the clients who had the most significant needs for services. Without knowing how many clients are being served at which level of service, I'm not sure how you can approve this without knowing that this amount of increase is actually needed. And I don't see that information here. So I would ask you to pause this, obtain this information on levels of service and the numbers of beds at levels of each service before you approve these large increases, especially given your current budget situation. Thank you for your time.
Are there any other public comments? Anyone online? Stephen, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My comment is about the millage fund by making an analogy to a recent Supreme Court case. In Medina versus Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, the court in a 6-3 decision remanded the case to the circuit court to effectively free the taxpayer from bankrolling abortion. In Medina, South Carolina excluded Planned Parenthood from a list of Medicaid-funded healthcare providers, those who provided abortions, to reflect the majority of those opposed to using their tax dollars to pay for it. As a result, Planned Parenthood was free to fund itself to fuel its abortion obsession. I was struck by the parallel of this case to the Momentum Center. Last June, during the motion to continue millage funding of the social recreation organizations, I voted no because it funded the Momentum Center. During the discussion, I presented the receipts of its DEI obsession. The board apparently struggled with the analogy of not going to a hospital for heart services because it also provided abortions. The distinction is who pays for the abortions. The question now is, should taxpayer have to continue to fund DEI? Should they have to fund civil rights road, cultural immersion, and cross the bridge trips? Should they have to fund an organization whose leadership brings to it a director who displays a Marxist fist with a rainbow flag on his LinkedIn page? One who sat on a corporate inclusion advisory council and another who was a corporation's first DE officer. This would be their lived experiences that they bring to the Momentum Center. The American majority made its opinion clear on November 5th that it rejected DEI. It is being defunded at the federal level. Similarly, the Ottawa County taxpayer, the majority who voted for Trump, should not be forced to continue to pay for DEI with its hard-earned tax dollars through the millage. If it is not paying for DEI, that needs to be made abundantly clear with objectively verifiable evidence, not just the experimenter's self-serving statement. This board is anxious about funding housing. It has used the millage to help support it. Take the opportunity to free up about $250,000 in millage and liberate the taxpayers from the DEI obsession. Let Momentum Center be free to fund itself. Frankly, how many actual CMH consumers use the Momentum Center? How many are actually daily consumers?
Thank you for those comments. We don't normally engage in dialogue with people who make public comments. But I will acknowledge Becky and Stephen both. You bring up issues that the board will be addressing during the course of the meeting, and to the extent that it's appropriate, we will provide responses accordingly. And then there is also an opportunity at the end of the meeting for further comment if you'd like. Are there any other comments, Beck?
Hello, Becky Buchholz with Harbor House Ministries. I had not prepared a comment to start us out today, but I just want to say thank you very much for the conversations that were had at the Financial Committee. And I know you all received a copy of our letter that we wrote in May of this year regarding the financial crisis at Harbor House. As it stands today, we are at an annual shortfall of $1.4 million. Our rates that we receive right now are a monthly shortage of $120,000. And that is, again, just to provide the care that our residents are required at Harbor House Ministries. From what I understand, and being new in this role, I am still learning, but from what I understand from Dr. Bashir's and Leah regarding some of the assessments done with our residents, our clients, they are some of the county's most vulnerable. And at this point, with 2 open beds, we are in best case scenario looking at closure through attrition. And in hopefully getting some of these rate increases, we will be able to admit the additional individuals that are waiting for a placement at Harbor House with our 2 current openings. So I would urge you to consider the information that you have already and make the decision that makes the sense for the individuals that we are obligated to serve in Ottawa County. Thank you.
Amanda, is there anyone else online? Okay, if there's no other public comment, we will move to the agenda for today. First item of business is the consent agenda. We have are looking for a motion for approving the agenda and for today in the minutes of our last meeting.
So move. Support.
Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Any issues concerning the agenda? Then by voice vote, all those in favor of the motion respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The first item on the agenda is a report from the Finance Committee. We did have our first meeting earlier this week, and the committee voted to have Vonnie serve as our chair, and Sylvia is our vice chair. So we will ask Bonnie for a report.
Thank you, Tom. So, yes, we had a really great meeting. I have to say we had good discussion. And where we landed after our meeting is we would like to seek a motion from you that we would approve the service contracts that are both the ones that were amended, the ones that were renewed, and the new ones. I have to add to this, I guess the word robust would describe our discussion well. There was never a question about need as we looked at some of the contracts that were presented. The question was, how do we fund this? Where does it come from? And I feel like we were able to put that all together in a package and to understand, there of course are some assumptions, but I feel like we were able to understand and support what the needs were. Shall I just go through, so those are the service contracts, and we also had great discussion, and I need to add to this. It was so helpful to have the staff who were present, Michael. They really gave us great information, and you know, the kinds of questions we ask probably don't feel deep to them, but to us they are. We're just seeking understanding, and we thank you for that. So is there no, I'm not going to say that because that's yours, Tom. I guess I'm just going to say, though, are there any other members from the committee who would like to contribute to the discussion and share what we had? I know we sent things out, but sometimes to get a real flavor for it, it's good to hear from people. Anyone else who would like to share anything from the Finance Committee?
I'll just share that I appreciated the updates that we got on our financial status and how, you know, it was very encouraging how there's a couple of things coming together. And I guess the things that stand out to me is that there is a surplus of funds that have not been spent within the budget, which does tend to happen as the year goes on. There tends to be some funds that accumulate, but that was very substantial. So that helps to cover the gap that we're experiencing. And then it also looks like we're going to be receiving some additional funds from, I think, both the LRE and then also the state. So that was all very encouraging that our financial status is really coming together. And, we're going to be able to support the high needs of these residents. So.
Thank you, Sylvia, for adding that.
I'd like to comment that while I was not able to be at the meeting, I was able to watch the meeting, and I had reached out to a number of the people on the committee, and I greatly appreciated the robust discussion that did happen. Obviously, when I saw those numbers, my eyebrows went up. However, my interest is in making sure that we know what we're voting on. We know where that's coming from and that we can sustain it. So I will be supporting the agenda item. Thank you.
So I'm not an official member of the committee, but I was able to join virtually. And I did find that it was very helpful to sit in and hear the discussion, the detailed discussion. So I would encourage anybody who on this board that is not a part of the committee, if you do have the opportunity, it is really useful to kind of sit and listen through the details of that discussion. I like the format of the committees. I think that it's very useful to be able to have that detailed discussion in that kind of format than having to go into the detail here.
Thank you.
And I just was going to say thank you to Dr. Brashears for putting the committees back together. I think having a concentrated specific time set aside for whether it's financial, I can't remember the other committee name, I'm so sorry. But, pardon?
Performance quality improvement.
Okay.
I've
there
had
we
to
go.
memorize it because I keep saying PPQI or PLMNQ.
It was just great having a specific amount of time, just like Paul said. So I really appreciate having this committee time. So it was good.
I would like to make a comment, since we did have public comment that addresses some of the contracts here. We have a dilemma. And Becky, I'd encourage you to at least monitor the Finance Committee meetings when we have them, just so that you'd have firsthand information of the issues and how we discuss them. The system is in crisis right now. And the reality is we have at least two providers, I think three, who have said that unless something is done to correct the ineffective and insufficient financing of the services they provide, they're in jeopardy of closing the doors. And we would have somewhere between 50 and 100 consumers here in Ottawa County who might not have a continued placement. And we don't have another place appropriate to put them, even if we had the money to pay for services somewhere else at a higher rate. So the dilemma is, what do we do? And as Dr. Brashears has pointed out, the rate structure we have here in Ottawa County is below the service rates that other counties are paying for placing their people at those very same facilities. So for example, in Harbor House, they may have someone from Kent County residing in Harbor House getting a higher per diem than we are paying for our own residents who are residing there. So the responsible thing to do is to try to correct the inequity in funding. We do not have standardized rates within our LRE region. That was one of the stated goals for setting them up to start with 15 years ago. It's never happened. Dr. Brashears is working to make that happen for our LRE, but it's not implemented yet. If it were implemented tomorrow, we would probably have to have an across-the-board rate increase for all of our settings, because we're at the lower end of the scale in terms of reimbursement for services. So we have a problem here in Ottawa County that we need to address, and the board is determined to do what's right for our consumers. Now, there's another issue that's the practical end of things. There's a greater issue of how do we finance the Medicaid system through our state DHHS contract with CMS for delivering Medicaid appropriate services. Right now, we are underfunded, we believe, on a relative basis compared to other counties for a number of various reasons. It has to do with the formulas that are used for funding. And Michael is well aware of that. The board is aware of that. And we are attempting to do what we can to educate our legislators and DHHS about those funding inequities. We have another problem where DHHS, for some reason or other, decided to withhold $240 million worth of money that the legislature appropriated. And for some reason, they didn't push it out into the system. And because of efforts largely promulgated by Dr. Bashir's, we've been successful in getting DHHS to release a good portion of that money to flow into the system and hopefully filter down to us, even though the formulas used are inequitable. But at least we hope to get more money coming into the system to help us raise the rates that we're paying to be more competitive and to be more equitable. So there are a lot of things going on behind the scenes here. And I applaud you for being concerned about how we spend the Medicaid money. But we also have to realize that these are desperate times and we need to do what we can to save the system for our consumers. So again, thank you for your comment, and hopefully this information will be helping to answer the questions you've raised. Do any of the other board members have any questions about the proposed contracts?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So with the money from Medicaid or the money from DHHS that's flowing in, do we know, is that supposed to be ongoing, or is that just a stopgap for this 1 year?
It increases the rates all the way back that we get from the state for October, and it's permanent. It's ongoing.
Okay.
It's part of the budget. Now, if the legislature passes a budget next year that's significantly less, then we'd all be dealing with it, but it's not a one-time stopgap.
Gotcha. So we are confident that the money that will presumably flow through LRE to the Ottawa CMH is going to cover our deficit for the year?
All indications is that we'll get close to balancing our budget. We can never say with 100% confidence that we can know, like, yep, absolutely, this revenue will cover it. Because as you know, we have ongoing expenditures and we can't shut the front door. So we're constantly in a delicate balancing act of trying to predict revenue coming in, which we never really know all through the year. It kind of changes. And with the inability to shut the front door on expenditures. So I am confident with some of the things that are happening now, the increase in rates. We also got a quality bonus for our CCBHC to close to $300,000 coming in that we didn't put in our budget, just came to us due to the excellent work of the staff, meeting quality measures and metrics. That's going to bring in $300,000, which will address the majority of the increase in the residential, well, in our overall budget to help sustain that. We also saved in open and frozen positions close to $2.4 million in our budget. We have tightened our belt in the things that we can control. But Board Member Jordan, there is no way that I can say here and say at any time in any part of my tenure, regardless of any budget, to say I'm absolutely confident we will not have a deficit at the end of the year. I will tell you, I don't believe I'm increasing our deficit even more. Remember last year we found out in November, close to $4 to $5 million. That's going to be covered by the LRE. They will make us whole for that. And there is money in the LRE Medicaid ISF to deal with over expenditures if we do indeed land there. That's why it was important to make sure that this cost is put on the Medicaid side of things. For years, we've been using millage dollars to help stabilize residential shortfalls instead of increasing our rates significantly. There were some small increases, but we didn't keep pace. So I'm moving this problem to where it belongs. Medicaid services should be paid for Medicaid. So I'll tell you, I am very confident that we're going to end the year, to the base of the information I have, close to balancing our budget, but I can't ever say, unfortunately,
Sure.
unless we had a surplus. And I know you know that, but it's important for people to understand I am not, and our CMH board is not in the business of creating unnecessary deficits. We must provide services regardless of the funding level. The services for these people in these contracts are for some of the most vulnerable we have. I must prioritize the budget based on the most severe we serve. So I think there's a lot of encouragement and new money that coming in that we believe is going to address this. But the system itself is still underfunded on Medicaid. And with potential cuts at the federal level, this will only get worse. Just to remind everybody, this is going to be in my director's report, but I'll just say it now, that even though the mental health waivers are not being targeted by the Senate, any reduction in eligibility will reduce our budget. So if they change the eligibility standards for Medicaid recipients nationwide to shrink them, to limit it even more, we will see a reduction in funding. To what degree, we don't know yet, but it's one of the more pressing things I'm working
So
on.
that I guess was going to be the crux of my question.
Mhm.
I think raising rates is admirable. I think it is probably overdue. But however, we are facing potentially huge roll-offs of Medicaid enrollment.
Right.
$1.2 million
Right.
is a lot of money. And if next year, our budget drops by 5-10%,
Sure.
well, it'd sure be nice to have that as a little buffer
Right.
because this is going forward. I think Harbor House does excellent work, but when you budget, I mean, your only choices are raise revenues or cut
Correct.
costs.
Correct.
That's
And
it. But
we've done,
basic costs.
we've done both.
And
So-
I know that. And this year, I think you've done fantastic work raising revenues. And
Right.
I just, going forward, I think we have to address, yes, we can hope and pray that DHHS comes in
Sure.
with money. We can hope and pray that there aren't huge Medicaid roll-offs. But all we can do is steward the money that's in front of us.
Correct.
And I guess I just have concerns. I'm not 100% convinced at this point that with these increases, that we're going to be solvent in a year or 2 years or 3 years.
Right. The solvency of the entire system is that question based on the logic that you're using, which is correct logic. Every partner in our region's in the same boat. Every CMH in the state is in the same boat.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that we need to sit
I
with all the
understand.
other ships.
We must prioritize the budget for the most severe. I do not have a choice to say, you know what? We're not going to do these increases because we can't afford it. It is against the rules for me to do that. Without these increases, we're going to end up having people needing new placements that will cost triple of what we're paying now, double to triple. I'm not being dramatic. We are 50 to 75% below the state average and some of the same level of care for these folks. So I think it's absolutely admirable that we look at it, but every single CMH director, every single year, every board faces this exact dilemma. Every year we've been in existence, this has been the case. Will we have enough money? How do we prioritize the services next year? And I would not put forward any rate increase unless I thought it was absolutely necessary, done due diligence to do so. And I know you're not saying I haven't done that. You're saying very clearly, what do you do when you have it? Well, that's why there's the region. That's why there's an internal service fund. That's our Medicaid account for unexpected increases in expenditures. There's money in it now to pay for this. What happens 2 years from now? 3 years from now? Every year it's a delicate ecosystem, and it makes it one of the hardest departments to manage because there is no predictable revenue with no ability to stop delivering the service. We literally can't say, and I know you're not saying this, like, sorry, have you get placed in that residential setting because our budget doesn't, it's actually written in the contract. We cannot deny a level of care based on finances. So that's why we're in a risk pool with the region, with the state. So when we have over expenditures on Medicaid, we have to share some of the risk. The LRE shares some of the risk and the state shares some of the risk. So there's built-in protections of complete overruns in the system. And it's one of the reasons why they had to release 140 of the 200 million. We're able to demonstrate that we needed it to get the rates increase. So I'm sounding passionate about it because it's the very nature of how CMHs are financed. We're in a risk arrangement of Medicaid, and it's appropriate to manage the Medicaid system the way that we are, based on the level of need of folks, and inform the region and state of what we're doing and why, and they're both aware of it. So
I have kind of a related question that I keep forgetting to ask. So it seems like our funding is very married to Medicaid enrollment.
correct.
Who established that? And is that a system change that we could work on? Because it seems like our funding should be based on need, not Medicaid enrollment.
You got it. So there's, if I may entertain, this will be, I'll just talk about it now instead of later. So it's a great question. Who established the way that the carve out the behavioral health based on Medicaid enrollees? The state of Michigan and CMS determined that.
So both federal and state.
Right. So the state of Michigan says, here's how we're going to fund the Medicaid behavioral carve out. We're going to use it on Medicaid lives and develop an actuarially sound process. Within our region, we utilize what's called like our budget is based on totally the number of Medicaid enrollees at each level, right? But the region could have done it based on historical funding in the past or needs-based, meaning the region could evaluate the different level of care needs within the CMH partners and distribute the Medicaid funding based on need and not numbers. In fact, in 2015, 2016, one of the reasons why we had a dramatic Medicaid decrease in this county is because the region decided to move away from needs-based to just total numbers. And we were a huge loser in Ottawa County when that happened, even though hysterically many people moved to Ottawa County because of the services that we provided. We had people from all over the country coming in, right? And their needs were higher. I'm trying to get us back to a needs-based philosophy. I've been collecting data for 8 months to demonstrate our folks have a higher need that transcends our ability based on the current funding model. It's not popular within the region to try to do that because there are winners and losers. But the whole state should move to a model of need-based and not strict numbers. And that's would answer that. So to answer your question is both, there's the worst of both worlds, okay? The state funds each of the regions based on the number of eligibles and some weighting on that. And it's not equitable throughout the state, by the way. Mm-hmm. And then our own region has a philosophy of how they distribute the Medicaid they get to the partners strictly on the number of Medicaid lives, enrollees. They're all, of course, alive, right? So the reality is that Ottawa County needs to keep promoting moving our funding to a needs-based formula. Because we have 30 people at Harbor House, because we have other stuff in our counties that have a higher level of care that we're responsible for, and the other CMHs too, but maybe not to the same overall percentage. We have a high percentage of people on, I wish it was higher, self-directed care with very expensive individual plans. We have the highest level of people on self-directed or self-determination plan than any other member, percentage-wise, in the region. They cost more, right? So I'm trying to get together us to have an understanding of what our true costs have. And Lily, to answer some issues in public comment, you're right. There hasn't been in the region a consistent tiered model. I've just built one. It will be fully presented at the next Finance Committee and PQI and the board in July. And you will see the logic and how we determine level of care and the residential right. But please remember, residential rates, but please remember, Person-centered planning is also part of that, the individualizing of that. I wish we were like other insurance companies. Oh, it's just $200, everybody gets $200. So,
So to quick
yeah.
follow up on that. With this, you know, it doesn't, I'm assuming, account for rate increases for every one of our.
It does not.
providers. But I heard Becky say that Harbor House is facing a $1.2 million deficit, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct.
1.4. Okay, so of their $1.4 million deficit, we're increasing rates to account for $1.2 million of that,
Mhm.
covering essentially the entire thing.
Correct.
I guess are we doing that for all of our providers?
We have to look at all of our provider rates. What this, and I'm not suggesting that all of them would get $1.2 million increases. But the reason why Harbor House is in this spot is because we haven't raised the rate for that level of care significantly in over a decade. And they've had to fundraise the difference to cover Medicaid services that are supposed to be paid by the Medicaid rate that you get. There are certain things in their operation that they're not asking us to solve. Their deficit, because we did due diligence, we don't just get a letter and go, oh, okay, we have to increase the rate. We have to investigate this thoroughly, is solely due to the staffing associated with providing Medicaid services that we are obligated to cover the cost on. And all of our providers in Ottawa County have had to fundraise 30, 40% of that. By the way, we don't pay for the buildings. We don't pay for utilities. We don't pay for the food. We don't pay for the majority of the administrative staff in these organizations. We solely are trying to cover the cost of direct care workers and some wraparound around these folks to do their jobs. And the current rate doesn't even cover the cost daily to have staff there. And okay, so why haven't we faced this last year or the year before? This board has authorized millage payments. We spent, since 2016, close to $13 million of millage to help residential providers stay open without increasing their Medicaid rates significantly. We only moved them a little bit over the last decade. There's been some movement. I'm not going to say we didn't. But because we used that strategy, we put ourselves in this hole of it's a Medicaid service that needs an appropriate Medicaid rate. We never even let the region know how much we needed to increase our rates to get to the average. Long as we balanced our budget every year, one way or another, through any funding source, everybody was like, it's great. We created an issue that now we have to deal with. And I intend to use the money of the region to pressure of the state and changing our model to ensure that our Medicaid providers have a rate that's a livable wage. I'm not talking about, oh, they're going to be fine now. They're still going to have to fundraise. Will we see other rate increases suggested to this board? Absolutely you will in next year's budget based on a presentation of our system and the strategy to pay for it. But yes, we will see that. It was going to be in my director's report, but I'll just say it right now. The region has finally launched a study to say, you know what, we don't have equitable rates through the region for residents. You know what, we don't even have the same assessment tool to determine level of care. So our public comment person, I don't think she left, was right on the money with that. That's a region-wide issue. We've developed a tool, a method. We've had it tested, actuarially sound model that you'll see that will show you some of the increases we need to make. There are some decreases that will happen too. Some people will come down in some of the providers that have a unique higher rate because of a unique situation with a unique client. So we've been having dialogues with providers, and I can say we're one of the only CMHs who've done that for 10 straight months. What is the true actual cost of care? And then giving that information to the region and then giving it to the state as well to determine that. And Vonnie asked me this directly in the Finance Committee. Will there be more proposed rate increases? Yes, for all of our contractors. Will there be a strategy to fund it? Yes. Will you increase funds? Will you increase rates if there really isn't a true emergent need? No. No, that's why I'm not increasing rates across the board now. I'm only asking to increase rates for people that are it is, in my opinion, a public emergency that has to happen. These 30 to 50 residents, just depending on how it, but it's definitely at least 32 of them, would have to find another place to live, not maybe, would have to, at double or triple the rates. I couldn't find another provider that would take the same resident for the rates that we have now, regardless of our financial situation. And guess who's responsible to do that? Us. But we share the risk with the region and we share the risk with the state. And all of these things, as Amy says, we try to land the plane with all these different funding sources at the end of the year and we hit the runway. I'm like, okay, we're there. I wish I could tell the public and the board, yes, A plus B equals C, and we're going to get there. I'm solving for X continuously. It's algebra, if you understand the analogy. So I appreciate the discussion. Let's just say there's no new money that comes in, and let's just say that we had a deficit. I would have to look at where we would cut in our organization. I'll tell you, it wouldn't be there. It wouldn't be with these residents and these contracts. It would have to be somewhere else. They're the most vulnerable. These people require total care in toileting, mobility, feeding, behavioral modification. Anytime they go out in the community, they need a one-to-one staff with them, okay? And the state is saying you have to get them out twice a week. By the way, at Harbor House, if they try to take all their consumers out on an outing, they'd have to have 30 staff on staff that day. So am I passionate about it? Yes. Not to say what we're talking about isn't correct. I'm saying this is the life of what we're doing all the time. Looking at potential deficits, changing our priority in the funding, keeping you and people equipped. But I'll tell you one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not going to use county millage dollars to solve a Medicaid problem. I've already spent them all for the year anyways.
So I just want to repeat what I think I hear you
Yeah.
saying to make sure I got it right. While I think that we all thought the millage was, this is just my head thinking this
Right.
way. While we all think the millage was a great thing for some things, it is and it
Very
was and it
important.
is, right? It was good. But you can only spend Medicaid dollars for Medicaid things. And
Correct.
we're in this mess because millage money was used for Medicaid things that wasn't supposed to be.
It was,
used for.
it was helping residential providers pay for things that wasn't the Medicaid service, right? So like we were giving them money and remember I said they have to pay for facilities and stuff. So we're using millage to somehow give them that so they could have other fundraising stuff to supplant what wasn't happening Medicaid. We did not supplant Medicaid funding with millage, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay. But what we did do is say to providers, and they're here in the audience, they can tell you in public comment, here's some millage, use it any way you can to stay open. You can't make it for the Medicaid service, and we'll get to the rates. And I'll tell you, understanding what this board has tried to do over the last decade, I've had to kind of look at it. It's a delicate ecosystem, but the fundamental flaw throughout was Medicaid. We didn't push at the regional level to go back to a needs-based Medicaid model. We just took what they would give us and it's like, do everything. And I intend, regardless of who's managing the Medicaid system in the next year or two, to get us back to that logic model. Or there is no way to do what we need to do. If it's just based on the number of TANF or DAB people we have, it doesn't matter that our folks might be fundamentally have higher needs. I'm creating ways to stratify that, to measure it, to demonstrate that. And you'll start seeing some of those things starting in July, especially the residential system. We have the same thing. I mean, autism, they just increased the amount of money we have to pay for an autistic, for ABA service to $66 an hour for aides. Half the staff were like, I should quit my job and just be an ABA provider. They gave us some revenue for that, not enough to cover it. So now we're fighting with the state saying you gave us a mandate. We had to increase all of the ABA contracts to the mandated level without the ability to get 100% of that recouped. And we're fighting that at the regional level and the state level. Paul, who works for Region can tell you all about that. We're constantly dealing with that. And I'm acutely aware, and it keeps me up most nights, that we have to balance our budget. I'm running it based on that. I'm not running it on, oh, well, don't worry, the region will cover it. If we didn't have an urgent need, I wouldn't recommend it. And you can know that because the number of new contracts that have come before you have gotten smaller and smaller through the last several months. When I first started, we'd have like 11 new contracts. Now we're like 2 that we absolutely have to have. And the staff have tightened their belt with vacancies to the tune of at least $1 million for sure, and 2.4 if the vacancy rate stays the same, $1 million. And so things that we control, oh boy, are we trying to control them. Things that we don't control are the front door, level of care need changes for our clients. If they need more, we shall, we must. We can't say, sorry, it's not in the budget. I mean, we wouldn't manage our house this way, right? Our personal finances, I get it. But this is the system that we're in that we have to fight for. And I'll tell you, if we didn't have our residential provider network and our staff and our other contract providers all tightening their belts, we'd be in much bigger trouble. And by the way, the majority of CMHs are in the same boat. How do we balance this versus that?
Michael?
Yep.
I'll play traffic cop here.
Yeah.
One of the goals when we set up the committee structure was to try to handle as much of this kind of dialogue as possible within the framework of a specific committee, and then have that committee make recommendations to the board at large. I think the discussion we've been engaged in today is fruitful and appropriate to the agenda item, because we're talking about contract changes and the financial statement. So everything in our discussion is related to that particular topic on the agenda. But I think it's, have we actually had a motion yet?
No, well, there was a motion made by, well, she said, Tom, it's for you to do.
Okay, I think it would be appropriate at this point to entertain a motion for item C, the amended, renewed, and ending service contracts, which are listed.
So moved.
Support.
Any further discussion on that particular item? Then we'll call the question with roll call vote.
I think you could have done all of them at once and the
Okay.
consent agenda for C, D, and E.
Yeah,
You want to do them separately?
but let's do them separately
Okay,
because.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. Motion carries. We'll entertain a motion for the new service contracts that are included in your agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Any questions on those contracts? Then we'll call roll call on that.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion carries. And then we'll entertain a motion on the financial statement.
So moved.
Any discussion on the financial statement? That is somewhat related to our discussion. But there are some items on there that committee members may want to discuss. The general board members might want to discuss. Okay, then we'll call roll call for that.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, that motion carries. And Chief Executive report?
Yeah, just a couple of items. In your packet, you have some of our kind of data that we have for access and crisis utilization. This report will always come to the board, but it will be thoroughly examined with more in-depth discussion at the new PQI committee that we'll have, but you'll always get this. You'll be able to get a better understanding if you're on that committee of the programs that are attached to all of the items that are on this dashboard. Yeah, you could, yeah. And it will, even though I'm going to always include it in our board packet, I'm just letting the board know is like these types of things, anything related to kind of access data, quality improvement data, dashboards will be standard agenda items on the PQI committee. I think our first meeting's in July, but you'll always get it. So the highlights of this is to once again demonstrate how active we are all of the time, right? So the first one to look at crisis contacts for the month of May, we have 103. That means folks that are in our services or not in our services contacted our crisis department, and we had to do a crisis intervention. So what this will show you is that, 60% of all the folks that contacted crisis in May did not result in inpatient stay or psychiatric hospitalization. And that is important because every one of them have the it could end up that way. So it truly is a diversion rate. So you don't have numbers here where they called the crisis line and they're just like, I have a headache. They were in crisis and it could have required an inpatient stay. Now you should notice that our inpatient utilization rate, 40%, went up significantly from other months. This might be a seasonal trend. We've done an in-depth analysis of who is actually hospitalized. And I've asked the staff, and they've already done this, Chris Madden and his staff there. By the way, when you meet Chris Madden, if you ask this guy something, he gives you the data like in 10 seconds. It's amazing. He knows everybody and their dispositions with his crisis team. And I'll tell you, they do a great job. But I was concerned that our rate of inpatient went up. And the way I look at that from a quality perspective or trending is if it happens 2 months in a row, to me, it's a pattern. And it might be seasonal. So I'll look at next month's to see if that percent, because we usually are sitting around 28, 29% of our crisis contacts end up in the hospital. And we looked at every one of these cases. Boy, there were a lot of individuals really struggling with a lot of significant issues that required inpatient psychiatric hospitalization. So when we get these dashboards done, that's why we wanted them monthly. It allows me and the team to say, all right, what happened? And I don't want to do it like 3 months ago. I want the month we just left. Because you can't make changes to the system on an old quarterly model, right? Like, oh, last quarter, like I need this stuff in real time so I can figure, is there something going wrong? The average cost for an inpatient hospitalization stay is $1,200 a day. Okay, so the average length of stay is between 3 and 5 days for adults and 3 and 10 days for kids or adolescents. And you can see we have percentages of both kids and adults listed in here, and they're about the same kind of trending. But we did experience in May an increase in hospitalization utilization. And we will look to see if that happens in June. And then we have to look at our ability to use our diversions like crisis residential and partial hospitalization instead of it. We had a meeting with Holland Hospital. I had a meeting with Holland Hospital with the crisis team and staff there to look over how we're doing with bed utilization. This happened, I think it was this week. Yeah, it was Monday, yeah. And to look at, okay, how are we doing in discharge planning and things like that? And it's working well. Holland Hospital's become a partner, a good partner. I will say, will alert the board. I've let all of our inpatient providers know that we need to find a way to have access for folks with adult developmental disabilities to get into psychiatric units. It's almost non-existent. We had a robust conversation on Monday with Holland Hospital, and I asked to work with them to figure out ways to improve that. Most of our families that have someone in this population category will wait in the ER for hours only to find, no, we can't serve that person. That's a problem. So we're working on that. So when we get this data, I just want to get a sense, give you a sense of what we do. We investigate if there's an increase immediately. I don't wait. I ask for the stuff immediately. Our staff are doing a much better job having the information ready. And we have to double check. Anna Bednarek, our COO, does a lot of that work for me. Unfortunately, I'll just send her something like, I want to know what happened here, do it. And she comes back with all of this stuff and then we have a meeting. So, Anna, thank you for your work with the internal operations. We're really creating a culture of looking at information in real time and not retrospectively. We can't wait any longer a quarter. The other stuff I'll bring your attention to is on eligibility assessments and the percentage of people that got into CMH. I answered this question about what's our front door look like. Remember, the board would hear all the time in public comment, no one gets into CMH. And that's true still if they don't make it past the screening. But once someone makes it past the screening, yes, that one. We had 62 people in May come to us that passed our screening, meaning they're eligible for an assessment for determining eligibility. 85% of those folks were found eligible. You notice autism still at 100%. So pretty much the screening for autism is pretty easy to get through. And then once you're there, you'll get a service. Now, what we don't have broken up here, which you'll get at the PQI committee and then the full board in the future, is what service did they get once they were eligible? Was it just an assessment? Was it ABA? But I wanted to first get a sense of month to month what our front door's doing, and by population group, who's actually getting into CMH, and then what happens to the ones that don't. So subsequent reports will focus on that 15% of, well, they didn't get in, what did we do? Did we just say good luck? Did we refer them somewhere? Are they, how are we educating them? And we use our Navigator program, which was the other metric in here, to help deal with people in our system and navigating and staying with them until we get a new location. So our CMH is one of the few CMHs that have navigators that, regardless of who you are and your insurance type, we find something for you. If it's with us or with somewhere else. And we have statistics on that that we have in your packet as well. So this just shows you that the door is open. The increase is going up in terms of who we serve. The number of Medicaid lives haven't changed, but who we serve, the percentage of them keeps increasing. So that's why we need a need-based model to fund us. The state doesn't even think that 94% of the Medicaid recipients are going to seek our services. They only really fund us for 6% of the Medicaid in our county. That's just ridiculous. Mental health prevalence rates would say it'd be 22% people could have a mental illness, right? So we're working hard on that, but this is to demonstrate. When I first started, I said we're going to have this every month so you can see the front door. So when Donna's told no one gets into CMH, she goes, well, maybe they didn't get through the screening. We'll find out. But look, right? Because if not, we just data driven. So, yeah.
So for the access numbers, that does include the CCBHC population as well?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so for those, I would be interested in seeing the data for those that are not meeting eligibility and why they are not eligible for CCBHC.
Got it. Hold on, let me write that down.
And while you're writing that down, I'll mention the first PQI meeting will be July 14th at the CMH offices at 3:00. And any of you are invited to attend and observe if you're not actually on the committee.
Just to add to that, that would be a good place to be able to review that detailed information.
Right. Yep. I wrote PQI
Yeah.
report. Got it.
Okay, great.
The other thing I wanted to mention is in your packet under attachment B, there's an executive summary from the Lakeshore Regional entity. They contracted with an Edgewater Professional Development Group. It's attachment B in your packet. You could just throw it up on the screen, okay? And what they did is they hired a consultant to examine the residential system in each of the CMHs. how the rates are constructed, what process you use to evaluate, the consistency we have. And you have the executive summary, but at PQI, I'll be able to release the full report, which will show you how we compare to other CMHs in the region. When you look at this, key findings. And remember, this is the system that manages us, right? Coming to these conclusions. Key findings, significant cost variability. Mean or average daily rates varied by 26% across CMHs, with all five CMHs experiencing double-digit rate increase despite client volumes, meaning everybody's expenditures have been going up, except for ours in a way, you'll see that, okay? And with not really connected to an overall increase in the number of people served in those residential settings. So residential costs have gone up in the region, and there's a variance of 26% among us. Inconsistent procurement and rate setting. What that means is, within our region, our providers have had to deal with 5 different ways of how a CMH determines a rate, right? We, in partnership with our providers, have developed a model that you will see in July that I think will be adopted region-wide, if not statewide, because it's based on a simple premise. What does it actually cost you to deliver the care? Can you demonstrate that? And what are we not including in the rate? And you'll get a breakdown of exactly all of our residential expenditures. I know now, to the penny, how much we spend on every residential client in our system, and folks that are not in a residential home, but getting CLS coming to their home for a huge amount of hours. You will see a comprehensive analysis of that in our subcommittees and then generalized here. I'm ready to show you the good work we've done with our partners. That's the difference. Uneven clinical practices, use of assessment tools, scoring systems, and level of care review protocols differed widely, often lacking alignment with rate setting. I said this in the first week I was here. My belief was there was no relationship between the level of care and the rate. We've had to construct that here, right? In the region, this report saying there is no relationship between the level of someone's need and the rate they're giving. I'm like, no kidding, right? But I'm glad that the region did this. Limited transparency and regional alignment. Few CMHs use benchmark rates or structured negotiated frameworks, especially out-of-county placements. Okay, I've done an analysis. You'll see we looked at every out-of-county placement, every in-county placement, why the costs are different, how to justify the cost differences, what other services every single one get if they're out-of-county. In addition to that, you will see a statistically valid analysis of the difference between in-county and out-of-county residential and CLS expenditures. This board will see it. You approved an increase a while back for a contract of IBH, Dr. Darren Lubers and his company, which, by the way, started in Ottawa County CMH 14 years ago. And they are a nationwide leader in doing these types of statistical analysis. The good news is they actually knew where our data was in Avatar, okay, which is like a greatest mystery. We switched EMR records because, but they actually knew how to find it. You will see that we've done that analysis. So they're recommending another phase at the region. And here's the recommendation. We should probably get together and develop a unified rate structure and methodology. And I'm like, gee, thanks. I've been working my tail off for 11 months. I'll be darned if I'm giving up mine at this point unless it aligns. However, we will support any region coming together to have consistency of benefit, rate determination, and level of care determination. Of course, we'll be part of it. But I'll tell you, I'm not going to do it at the expense of the true needs of Ottawa County residents. If this process ends up with everybody gets $200 a day and that's just the way it is, it would have failed. There has to be a relationship between the level of care, the actual cost of staffing, and the rate. And it needs to be statistically sound. And so that's what we're going to be doing. But I show you this because we were calling for this a year ago, and I'm very happy that the region did this. Believe me, it was, a lot of us were kicking and screaming during it. But this is good, but it should validate the concerns that we heard in public comment today. And the parallel of, by the way, I'm just looking at this group of providers. Wait till I get to other groups. These are not the only providers in this situation. So I give you this report to understand that we've all been moving in this direction, and luckily the region is kind of getting there. You're going to hear that other CMHs cut the rate to providers. Those CMHs have been told that they have tons of folks being discharged. 4 homes I know of are closing immediately. They have to find new placements for those people at double the cost. So it's not as easy as just, well, we'll just, not give an increase or do give an increase. It's a very delicate ecosystem. But this board will see beyond the shadow of a doubt that we used a very deliberate, research-based, provider-participated method to come to our conclusions. And, I'm bragging a little bit. I think you'll be proud of the work the staff has done on this. I know I am. And so you'll be able to have more of a footholding to understand the issue. Besides me coming and saying, do it or else. Do it or we're going to the doomsday, right? That's part of it, but we have to have a method to solve the issue.
Dr. Brashears, are other regions doing studies like this that you're aware of?
Not in the same way that we are. Other people have different ways of utilizing it. We took the very different approach. The first thing we asked is, providers, what are your costs? Let's talk that. How do we define certain terms? Now, it hasn't been perfect in our thing, but I think the providers would say, at least we've asked and at least we're including them, right? I hope that the state would understand that this is needed. It shouldn't matter where you live. You should have, and that's one of the biggest critiques of our system, is that we don't have portability from county to county, region to region, of equal ways of looking at the same benefit. It's a real problem. That's why the state, maybe we'll restructure the whole thing. It's not like our system's perfect, and it's like, we have, I say reform, not restructure. Reform our system, not destroy it, right? But we have a long way to go as a system to truly meet the needs of the citizens that we have the honor of serving, not the burden of serving.
That's where I was headed in my question. If other regions are doing this, so we can bring this information to the state and go, yeah, reform.
Yeah.
Restructure. I mean, let's just kind of fix what we're able to. It's that's where I was headed. If other regions are pulling this kind of information together too.
It's like herding cats, right?
They're pulling it in different directions because every direction in different outcomes comes to different conclusions. And if you don't have every direction and different outcomes, then you won't get their actual correct one.
Right. I call that chaos theory, right? And so that is a valid point. There are different agendas for different people and why they do certain things and principles. My principle is pay the basic cost of care for all of our providers and staff. Our staff have been working without $2.4 million in vacancies to work with the hardest group of individuals in mental health, in DD and substance abuse. The staff at Ottawa CMH deserve and will get from me a big thank you for the past year. There are key positions we have not filled. And every step of the way, you need to know this. I have the county saying you can't fill them in this. I got people telling, these are real lives that we're serving. This isn't like an insurance company that can say, you know what? Sorry, we don't have any openings. Wait 3 months. We're the only system that can't say that. And we're not perfect. But our staff has diligently worked without. And so when I even mention productivity standards with my staff, I have to be careful because they may think I'm saying you're not doing enough. I want to validate what they're doing, not say that they're not doing. I know they're all working hard. So getting on the same page is important. So at the regional level, this is happening. As you also know, I did a, I'll call it a podcast, I don't know, a Did You Know series on the impact of the state's plan to restructure us. It's about an hour and a half. It's on YouTube. I've sent the link out. We've had over 250 views of it. People are watching it. it's been good to switch to kind of recording those and doing it. But, you still have technical difficulties, and I kind of still miss seeing Rosalie in the audience, so I am intending to still have some community meetings that are not in that format, that are really just come and talk to me. We're starting our consumer advisory group or committee panel again. You'll see some words on that. We're getting that. We're going to be moving that to different locations so that consumers don't come to the big building. We're going to go to certain sites like the clubhouse and other places. And we're going to have dialogues from the consumers of what they think they need. I also am going to hold I haven't told anybody in my shop this yet, a guardian meeting. If you're a guardian of any of our clients, I want to meet with guardians, families that are guardians, and about a 2-hour, come talk with me. I want to listen to what you're facing. I started to do that almost a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, like when I first got here, and I've been swept away to deal with some other pressing matters, but that is a very important voice that I'm not hearing enough. I need to get them together. So I'll send out details on how we're going to do that. Ottawa County's been an active participant with the Michigan Board Association for CMH boards to help deal with all these advocacy issues. I've been appointed as the Western Region's representative on the Member Services Committee at the state through our board association, which means that any member or client issues, including scholarships for families and consumers to go to the conference. I've been asked, are we going to do that? Well, now I'm on the committee at the state that asks that question. And I'm telling you, we're going to get some scholarships over here to do that. And so, yeah, I don't sleep, but it's important to be part of these committees at the state level. And so for the public, I will be looking at the Michigan Association of Community Mental Health Board's ability to give us more scholarships for families, consumers, guardians to attend the conferences, because the conferences are very good, but our folks are shut out. They really are. I was able to attend the last conference with Mr. Duff here. I thought it was a good conference. I'll let Paul in a moment talk about what he thought of it. The thing is, it's kind of like everybody's walking around like, is this the last one? Are we going to have a CMH system in a year? And so it's kind of like sitting in a tradition of care. You're like, is it going to die? I've been asked for the next conference in October to do a presentation on the tradition of CMH and what's at stake. I did a Did You Know series on it already. I'm going to turn that into a presentation to do statewide, because what's in jeopardy is what we do. These meetings won't exist in the same way if the state is successful in privatizing the system. And that's exactly what they're going to try to do.
When is that conference in
October 27th. I'll get the dates out, and you all eligible to go, and we pay for it, so you know. Paul, and why is it important to go? Because you need to link up with other board members. You're part of a huge community of thousands of board members, not hundreds. So.
Yeah, I can add to that. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been attending these conferences for over 30 years, and but this was my first one as a representative, as a CMH board member. And these are always very, very informative. They have great speakers. There's great breakout sessions that you can learn a lot on specific topics and what's happening around the state. But there's also, they do have breakout sessions that are specifically geared towards board members that educate you on CMH board activities and what happens within the CMH. So you can learn a lot from those. I'm not sure if they're still going to be doing those in person. I think that they're going to be doing some of those virtual in the future. But the piece that I find that is the most informative is the opportunity to link with other board members around the state. And every CMH has representation from their board members. And so it was kind of surprising to me to see that Ottawa did not have representation there. So I would strongly encourage any board member to be able to attend those, to be able to find out what is going around. They have representation or speakers from state and federal level about what's going on around the country and around the state of Michigan that does impact us directly and the service delivery system here.
And is this board thing like in Chicago?
No, it's in Traverse City. So if you're interested in going, and let's just say you can't get to Traverse City, I will take you. Right? So, you know, for a lot of our folks that could go, I think that's the barriers, like, and they put it in the left-hand corner of the lower, but yeah. So half the states are converging on Traverse City, and it's like, well, for us, it's not that bad, but you got people coming from, you know, all over the state. But if you're a board member and, you know, are interested in going, please let Amanda and I know. We cover the cost of that, and it's in the budget we have. And if you have trouble with transportation, I'll take you. You have to sit in my car, my Lincoln. It sounds like a Harley Davidson, but, you know, be happy to take you.
Lincoln has a comfortable seat.
It sure does. Yeah, it's got, you
Is
know,
it just for the day?
pardon?
Is it just
It's
for that?
it's usually 2 days. But you don't have to go for all of it if you don't want to, right? But, you know, it's usually, you know, a 2-day conference, 1 full day, and then the second day is kind of like a 3/4 of a day.
Sure.
You know, type of thing. And the first day is really the best. The second day is good too, but most of your speakers that are there in the first day.
And it's like a half a day the second
Yeah.
day. And, you know, they do offer it. I mean, right now it's offered 3 times a year. They have done, this will be 2 in a row in Traverse City, but they do them in Grand Rapids. They do them in Kalamazoo
Right.
and other places within the state as well.
What they found was, on the member service committee that I attended yesterday, is that they moved most of them to Traverse City because the attendance rate went up significantly. It's like when they were offering them in like Kalamazoo, like, no, well, you know, I'm not going, or like Dearborn, I'm not going, right? But Traverse City, people are like, wow, it's fall and it's pretty. It's like, so they actually have statistics because, you know, me, I asked like, so why are we doing them all there? And they showed me the attendance goes up significantly. But all of what we're talking about will not be in existence if the state is successful and privatizing the system, which would start in October 1 of 2026. So a little bit, 13, 14 months, right? What that's going to do, and if you haven't watched my discussion on that, I have an hour and a half on it, okay? It will fundamentally not allow us to manage anything. We would be a fee for, besides general fund and crisis stuff for the mental health code that we have to do. We would be a fee-for-service provider in the Medicaid system. I'd be a competitor to the very contracts that I just said in Cruz. We would say, do we want to do residential services directly? And then we would be contracting with somebody to give us a rate, right? All the services we do in Medicaid would turn to that. We'd be a member in person-centered planning, but not controlling any of it. We wouldn't have any ability to set individual budgets for families. Some insurance company will do that. I'll be like, Beth, good luck. Right? So self-determination and self-directed care, if people don't understand, will be severely jeopardized because the CMH cannot manage it under the way they've described this thing. It said we can do no managed care functions, and that's what that is. So I'm sounding dramatic because it's dramatic. I'm sounding epic because this is different than any other change that's been proposed. So if you haven't watched that, I go through in detail the state's plan what we know of it so far, at their website, their points, and then kind of like, I even said it's kind of like the Democratic or Republican response to their state of agenda. I kind of go through it and say, decoder, this means this. So, and you know, that concludes my report, but I'll take any questions anybody has.
Have you been able to highlight the fiscal irresponsibility of adding 15% administrative costs by
$500 million will be taken away from service providers if this proposal goes through. People complain that we have too many levels. And in my video, I said this, we take bites of the apple all the way down. The feds send the money to the state then takes a little bite and sends it to the regions, a little bite. The health plans take big bites. They cut the apple in half. Their administrative rates are far higher than ours on the physical healthcare side, right? We estimate, the Board Association and folks getting together, that the system will automatically on day one lose $500 million in dollars because that will be the amount the health plans take. They're not going to take it. The health plans are not going to take this with the same 2% overhead we have at the PHP level. And Paul lives that
It's
world.
not profitable.
Yeah, so, why do it? I can't answer that question. I'm up at night saying, why are we doing this? I can't answer it. But it will not save money. It will not equate to more money getting to providers or people. It seems crazy that it wouldn't, shrinking the number of these people, but they're not shrinking the number of the PHPs, they're just making them larger and having fewer of them. All of those functions still have to be done. So you got to remember that your executive director here was in support of a bill to change the system many years ago. This is fundamentally different than that one. This says no connection between the CMH and the management of any of this. We'll have far less to do on this board. Service contracts, I'll say, well, it's our contracts with this region we're talking about. I'll have no authority, ability to manage, work, develop any contract besides what we do directly with county employees. There'll be this much of a job and we'll have to adjust things, but that's really what's at risk here. And I'm not just being dramatic. But watch it. I spent 20 minutes here, but there's an hour and a half. I go through it. It's starting to spread. It's now on the Board Association's website. Other counties are watching it. They're passing board resolutions. They're doing their part. Everybody's trying to do this. And I was asked, are you trying to save your job? I said, absolutely yes. Just like the fire chief wants to be the fire chief of the fire department. We are like the police or the fire department. We're not behavioral health care. That's the difference between us and how they're conceptualizing it. We are more than Medicaid, behavioral health, therapy services. We are the safety net. We are the police department in mental health, the fire department, the safety net.
Are we aware of advocacy issues that are happening from Ottawa County aside from you? Are people reaching out to their representatives? and
Yes.
Folks like that?
Ottawa County residents have placed over 100 phone calls, believe me, I heard about
Okay.
it, to legislators and other folks. The people are doing their part. We'll be increasing that effort. There'll be ways we'll have a way that you can fill in this one thing and it'll go right to the governor's office. Right?
And to your state legislature.
Yeah, so through we've, with the Board Association, we've done that. And that's why I get on these committees, so I know how, what's going on, and then we yes, we'll be able to increase that effort. But we also have to construct a list of reform items and a strategy to deal with them. We can't just say save the school without reforming the school. So I'm also looking at that. What needs to change and our approach to change them. So we're pretty busy. So any other questions? Great. What's next? We have no presentation. Okay. The new business, right? Mr. Chair?
Yes.
He had information only on the region's FSR. So I don't know if you can walk them through.
So we did receive a copy of the LRE's combined regional FSR for April. So these are regional activities, financial activities through April. I guess if there are any questions, I don't know. This report, what happens is we have a section for actual activities. So we report our expenses and revenues received. We have our projections for the year that are included, and then proposed spending plan, which is something that's put together early in the year. And we kind of adjust as we go, maybe on a quarterly or biannual basis, depending on our activities. And then there's a section for the CCBHC expenditures as well. Regionally, through April, we were reporting about a $500,000 deficit of expenses to revenue at that time. And our projection for the year was just under $1 million in deficit for expenses to revenues. You can kind of see how that compares to other
others in our region. That was before we received some of the additional revenue. We've, had some other positive financial anticipated revenues that we'll be reporting out for May and going forward. But at that time, we were projecting those numbers, and some of that you'll see kind of gets offset with surplus in the CCBHC projections at that time, which is on the second page. Overall, if you continue on to the third page of the FSR information, regionally, there is a projected surplus for Medicaid HMP revenues through April as of this reporting period. So that's the first time this fiscal year that we've had any surplus anticipated regionally. So that's a good trend. And again, we're 2 months after, so I think the trends are continuing to improve. This was before that announcement that the state was going to release money. So I feel like all things are, moving in a positive direction, and we're controlling our spending to the extent possible, all those things that Dr. Bashir shared. So this is kind of like a snapshot a couple months ago of that start of that trend, kind of, we're hoping for even better numbers in May and going forward as we close out. We just started or we'll be starting next week, the last period of the last quarter of the year. So, kind of wanting to stabilize and get into a good position for that third quarter, or for the end of that third quarter. So
I would just add this, if you don't mind, Amy, jumping in here. We struggle in sharing this report because there's sometimes we don't get it, and the public's pointed it out. Where is it? When we get it, it's behind. And so you see red, and should I be concerned about the red? Is the green good? So I want to consider us, we'll try to just show this at the Finance Committee, but this report only validates the trends we think we're in. But you can't read it and with all confidence go, oh, look, they're going to have $2 million more. And I know Amy struggles with this thing. I mean, when we get it, how we do it, how it aligns to our stuff. So I like the report. I think it has some value, but we're really struggling looking at the utility of it and reporting it to you when it's a snapshot backwards. It doesn't include current stuff in it. And so we're using it as, is the trending we're thinking happening, showing up? So if you read these and go, well, okay, what do I do with it? We do the same thing. And I use it as a way of saying, are we trending the right way? And so we're going to make sure that when we get it, it goes to the Finance Committee packet. And just so if you're the public, it's hard to get the finance stuff out before Finance Committee, just the timing. So it might be the day of, or the day, like a couple of days before we'll release the packet, just because of the timing of everything. And I know that was a question, and we'll try to do better. But yes, we're going to put stock in it. I don't want you losing sleep over the LRE FSR unless we alert you yeah, this is actually a trend that means the region's going to be $10 million in a deficit. Right? So we're not going to ignore it, but if you're confused reading it, I'm confused reading it. I'm always asking Amy, what am I looking at? Well, here it's this point of time and this hasn't been added yet. Oh, good God.
I think two things that are important factors with reporting 2 months back is we've received our pre and our post payments for those months,
Right.
which sometimes we don't have at the time that we're reporting 1 month back. So we wouldn't have gotten our last payment for that month of Medicaid. So it does help with the revenues from our perspective. Even those payments have iffy timing, so we might not get that even 2 months back on occasion, especially with the CCBHC revenue portion. And I think another factor to keep in mind is that not every CMH in our region does their projection the same. So we're not using a similar methodology to report out. We're not using actuals. You know, they're reporting maybe actuals with some adjustment for what they're seeing are going to be expenses from contractors, whereas we might report actually what we've paid, you know, and it's kind of a mix of what people are defining as actuals. Like if the actual service happened, they would report it as an expense. Whereas, you know, another way to handle that is what we actually paid as an actual, because they haven't billed that claim and we haven't paid for that service, you know, on the contractor side. So a couple of those things, you know, make it even more challenging, but good information, good trends, and, you know, we're hoping to continue that trend. So, and then there's also the year-to-date reports by, you know, with program information specifically.
Amy, I was reflecting on the Finance Committee meeting when we had a discussion about some of the financial reports. And it struck me there's a parallel in the business community. You can be on a cash basis or an accrual basis. And it looks to me like we could characterize our operation is on a cash basis. And the dilemma there is CCBHC, for example, we have expenditures this month that we have incurred for payroll and other allocable expenses. We have encounters that we now can get reimbursed from the state by, but that's like an account receivable where we did $1 million worth of expenses providing those services. We're submitting a bill to Lansing for $1 million to reimburse us, but we don't get that until next month, or maybe even later, if there's an adjustment plus or minus. So I don't know whether there's a way to tighten that up by doing some accrual statements so we can come up with a P&L for CCBHC to see real time at the end of the month. Here's where we think we are. We've covered our expenses or we've lost money on that project.
So countywide, we use a modified accrual, which is a mix of both. And we have not traditionally in CMH done monthly accruals of our revenues, which we just started this fiscal year. And so we are working toward that. We actually are meeting with the CFO team or the finance team from the LRE in a couple weeks. I wanted to go over our payment schedule so that we can hammer out when we should be doing accruals for our finance team, because you know, some of that we have to rely on the Treasury to post the payment, post the accrual. Fiscal Services has to post the accrual, but at least we are working to get to that exact thing you're asking. And some of that, you know, is a challenge because we don't have control of, you know, sure, we could do the accruals, but we have to wait for somebody to post it. You know? So it could be something that we enter, but Fiscal Services has to actually put it on the general ledger. So we're working toward all of those things, but that's exactly right. And that's what happens when, you know, when you're looking at it differently, CMH to CMH, and that, you know, I think it's funny that it is that we operate, especially on the revenue side, as a cash, you know, we report on a cash basis. We actually operate more as an accrue, you know, in an accrual model because we're paying way ahead and, you know, we're accruing all of our expenses to the month that they occur. So, yeah, it's a little bit of both, but we're kind of trying to manage that. And that's, you know, maybe we can talk about that more at the Finance Committee next month. I can, you know, report on that meeting and how that goes with what we learn from their payment cycle. The other thing is that we have irregular payment schedules, you know, from when they're sending out money, and they've been more communicative of when payments may be late. And they're relying on the state. So I think it's like a trickle down of the state pays them, but it's late there. And then they have to kind of sort out all the money and then pay us. And it might be a Friday. And so it doesn't post at the bank until the following week. And, you know, so all those details. But.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else on the board have any questions about this informational item? Michael, the proposed bylaws?
Yeah, one of the things we want to do in our current bylaws, it gives a numerical number for a quorum. It's like 7, right? I want to change it, and it's allowable in examining it, just to 51%. So what I want to do is in our bylaws right now, it says you have a quorum if you have at least 7 members of the board present. The problem is if we have vacancies, that becomes a larger percentage of people that need to be present. And we had a couple times this year, we had 1 or 2 vacancies, and 7 would have been like 60% of the board would have to show up or whatever. So we're allowed to have it by simple majority of 51%. And so what I want to do is update our bylaws, Article 11, from 7 members to 51%. So that way, even in committees too, you only need a majority of the committee members to show up. Because if we have 5 and you need, says we don't even address that, in a way, we're not gonna have 7 people, right? So this is a recommended motion to change, to update our CMH Board of County bylaws, Article 11, from 7 members to 51% is what I'm asking to do.
Now, you mentioned committee structure. We have 5 people on the committee. If 2 of them show up, that would not be 51%.
Correct.
It would take 3 per, so we're still talking majority
Yes,
in that case. Where we have 12 on the board, if 7 people show up,
would be
we
all
would
right.
have both a majority and 51%.
Yeah. And the only thing I'm doing is adjusting for the full board, really, if there are vacancies
Yep.
that have to be filled, the number then your overall percentage would have to go up, right? So right now, if we implemented this 51%, it would still mean 7 of you would have to be here and all those things. But there are many times where there are vacancies on our board. And we had for a while there, we had like a month or 2 with 2 people. So I want to move away from a numerical number to a percentage that says majority.
And would it be a majority of the serving members?
Yes.
Okay.
So say like in a committee, if you're not on that and somebody just attends, it wouldn't count as part of the quorum.
And if we had 2 vacancies on this board, we would have 10 serving members.
Yes, and so it'd be 51% of those.
So in that
6.
case, it would take 6
Yeah.
members.
So I'm asking you to consider that and allow us to change our bylaws.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Any further discussion?
I just have a question, and that is, the bylaws that pertain to this meeting, I just was not aware that the committee structure is also obligated to follow the very same bylaws. And that's not what we did previously, but again, I'm not saying right or wrong, just curious.
Well, that's a good point. We had our first committee meeting this week, kind of on an ad hoc basis, recognizing we have bylaws for the full board, but not for committees. So it's a good question.
And we kind of did a loosely structured Robert's rules
Right.
at that meeting, and I just, given that I was appointed as chairperson, I just wanted to know what the expectation is moving forward.
Yeah, and to me, that's why this doesn't mention in the loose reading of Robert's rules, it just says majority, quorum, and committees. So to me, the expectation would just be that. This one really is more influential to the full board, this recommended change. But you are correct, there isn't, there are certain articles in our bylaws that would pertain to all board members, regardless if they're in a committee or not. This specifically is quorum, right? And our interpretation, or my interpretation on the committee, is you have to have a majority for a quorum. It doesn't matter the number you have appointed, just a majority of them. And obviously, if you have 2 and 1 doesn't show up, but this is to allow the flexibility that we used to know at the committee level, but address it at the full board level of, we're saying it's majority.
I would like to pause on it and to have it come back next month. I would appreciate that. We often do that with the Board of Commissioners. We'll have a first reading.
Okay.
And then we'll come back the next month and do the vote. And that just gives a little more time to think about it. Maybe if there's other things that need to be adjusted or addressed, we can make sure we have all the bases covered, instead of just moving quite so quickly.
Okay.
So I know somebody already made a
Yeah,
motion, but
I'll withdraw my motion. I'm fine with that.
Okay, so you're moving that we table this for the next meeting?
yes, I am.
And does that require a second?
I withdrew my motion,
Oh, okay.
so it does not.
So then,
So there's simply not a motion on it at this point. But do you want me to make that motion?
why don't you? That way we'll have a record.
Sure. I would move that we would table this item until next meeting.
Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign. Thank you. The motion carries.
Can I ask a question related to that though, just for clarification? Is there a reason why you wouldn't have like a minimum number though? Because like if for some reason, unforeseen reason that like a majority of the people weren't able to attend and you only did have 3 members here, and there was a specific topic that did come up that was pretty critical or controversial, and those 3 members did agree to that, where the majority of the board was
Sure.
against that?
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's a good question and why we should table it. But my thought on that is it's not 51% of who shows up. It's 51% of the full, like of the membership.
Mhm.
So you would never be in a scenario where 3 people show up and you say, well, there's a majority of those who showed up, or, it'd be an oxymoron in a way.
Mhm.
So I think there's a way to address what your concern is. The point is that, just happened at the Regional Entity Board last week, okay? Early this week, where they literally didn't have a quorum till the last second. Someone walked in 15 minutes because they're doing a hard number versus a majority thing. And so I'm like, okay. But I think we should look at it more, look at the unintended consequences of that. But just know as it stands now, if we have vacancies, we are increasing the percentage to almost like a supermajority have to be present. And so that rarely happens, but we were just kind of thinking it through and.
I've got a question for you though, Paul. In the scenario you just mentioned, would we as a board want to cede the authority for an important decision to just 3 board members?
That's my point, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think that scenario would happen though, is what I'm saying,
Mhm.
under this.
Let's say we had a blizzard
Right.
and only 3 people showed up.
You don't have a quorum.
Right, we couldn't meet either way.
Mhm.
Realistically, it seems like we would probably only ever have 1 or 2 vacancies, and the presumptive effect of this is if we have 1 vacancy, then we'll need 6 instead of 7. It should just be a bit easier to make a quorum.
And if we got into a real problem and half the board resigned, then the board wouldn't be able to function until new appointments were made.
Right. Which we did have resignations on this board not too long ago.
Mhm.
That created instant vacancies. Like within the last 3 years. So, but I love it. We'll just look at it more. We'll do some more due diligence. You look at it. And we'll bring it back and see where we land.
Great. Okay, at general information, comments, meetings attended, any board members have anything to share?
I would like to share just that I made a visit to Benjamin's Hope and I intend to make more visits, but it was just absolutely delightful. And I left feeling so good about things going on here in our county. And it's my goal to continue to make visits to places. So
Mhm.
just very positive.
Okay,
I visited the new Momentum Center location in Holland, and it's a wonderful collaboration between a church and a nonprofit. This space was underutilized by the church, and Momentum Center has a couple of rooms that they use now. They also have access to the gym, And so I just wanted to say that just that combination of the church and the nonprofit working together was just phenomenal for me to see that.
I was able to go to the White House State Leadership Conference this last week and make some good connections with HHS. So I'm hopeful that if we need those in the future, we'll be able to do what's needed there.
Any other comments or information to share? Another opportunity for public comment. Anyone wish to speak?
Hello, Dawn Ruddick from Heritage Homes, and I live in the city of Holland. I'd just like to say thank you for the decisions made today for additional fundings for the agencies who have come forward and asked for that. I know that was a very difficult decision because you're balancing your own budget, but I can say as an agency who's similarly suited, I'm sure that that money was extraordinarily needed, or either through attrition or through an immediate change, keys would need to be handed over because the amounts that were asked for were actually very modest compared to what's needed across the state. So thank you for that. I would just like to say, with my 27 years of experience working with this changing board, and I can validate many of the things that Dr. Bashirs has said today. We are serving at least and I would say many of the smaller agencies, or what we refer to as the mom and pop service providers. But for sure, I can speak on behalf of the agencies that provide services. We are absolutely serving the most vulnerable people that I've ever seen. And I've been in this work for 40 years. We are serving people who have moved from out of state. I've seen that 20 years ago. We were the county in the state who served the most children on the children's program waiver. People were moving from out of state and out of county to Ottawa County because we had the most waivers available out of the 425 that were allotted throughout the entire state. We had the most available. And when more became available, Ottawa County scooped them up because they had the best ability to serve. And now we're serving those adults who have a high need, and very often, so behaviorally or medically fragile individuals do need a one-to-one almost the entire shift, if not the entire shift, and sometimes need 2-to-1 care for portions of that shift. So the numbers that are being asked for look extraordinarily high. But if you're trying to serve an individual to meet the needs that are actually there, and at the same time, the CMS final rule asking for 3 times a week getting out into the community, it's extraordinarily high to provide that service at the per diems that are being have been offered, because we also have a higher level of requirements being pushed down to us, and we need to continuously reach for a higher standard. So it's a scary time whether the entire system's going to be present next year for all of us. But I think we all need to work as if it's going to be in this fashion or another. And I just want to say publicly, thank you for the work that you're doing. I think that shaking trees in different directions is so important. And I appreciate the work that you all are doing. And I think trying to make a difference and getting attention throughout the state has been very, very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Anyone else? Rosalie beat you to it.
Rosalie Austin, City of Holland. My girl back in the day, she was one of those 400 child waivers that aged onto the adult HAB waiver that the eligibility is institutional level of care. So since birth, practically, I have been providing that level of care by myself until she was finally eligible at 12 years old for that. The needs are the same, if not more. IDD, you're not healed when you turn 18, but the resources went lower and I'm getting older. I tried to do it, specialized residential placements. That did not go very well and it happened to be out of county. So I am extremely grateful that my girl is back home in the Ottawa County where she was born and raised. And we do need to support these providers because out of county, it did not go very well for not only my family, but many other families without a county placements. Those resources need to stay within Ottawa County boundaries. And we need to appreciate the people that do the direct care. They are direct support professionals that are undervalued, underpaid. There's not enough of them. And these are people, not just numbers, that we need to care for. Thanks.
Thank you. Barbara?
Barbara Lee Van Horsen, City of Grand Haven Momentum Center. I want to address comments and questions that were presented by Stephen Rockman during the opening public comments. I want to assure Stephen that you, the CMH board, are a responsible public body that take seriously your role in reviewing the services you provide and the millage supports. Every month we submit detailed data to community mental health. That includes a list of every activity and class we offer and the number of participants in each. Some members are in fact present daily. Others come for specific programs or when they are in need of specific supports. We also submit a detailed list of our expenditures. All millage money goes directly and only to the social recreational program. None of it is used to address the social determinants of mental health through community conversations or cultural immersion. Not long ago, I was walking in a store when I heard somebody call my name. I turned around and there she was, a former Momentum Center member who had moved away. She threw her arms around me and said with tears in her eyes, "You saved my life." She wasn't talking about a therapist or a medication. She was talking about community, about being seen, heard, and valued at the Momentum Center, when she felt she had nowhere else to turn. That's what we do. We provide social, recreational, mental health programming. No clinical diagnosis, no insurance, no referral required, just a safe place to belong. And we need more of that now more than ever. Mental health is the #1 concern in Tri-Cities. This reality that mental health might be privatized, not only is that not going to serve the disability community, that's going to ramp up anxiety to even more record numbers than it is now. And yet, we don't have enough clinicians to meet the need. People are struggling and waiting months for care. Everyone needs and deserves to know that they're valued. And because of the mental health millage and our integrative approach, many Momentum Center members are now employed in the community, participate in church activities, and are otherwise engaged in friendships and interactions beyond the walls of our organization. The simple idea, providing a place and a person who will listen non-judgmentally, is saving lives. It isn't a substitute for professional care. It's a bridge to it. It's how we reach those who might never walk through a clinic door otherwise, but who might sit down next to somebody who will listen to them and say, "I'm not okay." At the Momentum Center, we believe that mental health support should be available to everyone. No stigma, no barriers, just human connection and hope. This work ensures that more people, like the woman who ran into my arms, have a chance to say, "You saved my life."
Thank you. Anyone else?
Becky Buchholz, Harbor House Ministries, and a resident of Hudsonville, Michigan. I'm going to call it like it is. As a leader of an organization, bias for the prioritization of those that I serve comes with the territory. And as a believer, a mother, and a registered nurse, I feel compelled to acknowledge the great need that exists in Ottawa County and within the greater spheres of our state and country. I recognize that the approval of our increased rates will come with scrutiny and fear for what the future holds. I have faith and trust in the advocacy and diligence of this board and the leadership of Dr. Brashears in pursuing a better structure of reimbursement from our funding sources. I stand here today to promise our partnership and collaboration as a faithful provider in Ottawa County. We at Harbor House are convicted by our obligation as to the service of some of the county's most vulnerable. We are committed to maximizing the efficiency of our resources and utilizing the benefits of our economies of scale to help reduce county costs that would be incurred if the individuals we serve were forced to find placements elsewhere. I am relieved, I'm grateful, and I'm motivated by rates that will not only allow us to keep our doors open and fill beds as they become vacant, but then to fundraise for the abundant life we strive to provide for the consumers we serve and the staff who dedicate themselves to this humble line of work. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the board? Do we have anyone online? Okay. That being the case, with absent any objection, we will adjourn the meeting until our next meeting. Thank you.
Right.